According to Seeley, there are over 1 million children and countless other adults in our world that go for days or even weeks without a change of clothing. And the clothing that they do have is minimal. It barely keeps them warm. Put yourself in this situation. What would you do if you had minimal amounts of clothing and zero changes of clothes? I know many answers arise when I ask this question, but I would like to call your attention to one answer that is very not likely that many of you thought of. This answer is knitting. I picked up knitting when I was a freshman in college, and I picked up this hobby because it's a great pastime, but it's also a great way to volunteer my time and skills to make clothing for less privileged people. Knitting ranges from extremely easy and fun to hard and challenging, and because of this, knitting is considered a respected hobby that can provide necessary clothing articles to a society. Therefore, knitting is an essential skill to everyone. To learn how to knit, we will first learn the different methods of casting on stitches onto the needle. After we have stitches onto the needle, we will learn 2 different stitches utilized in knitting. And these stitches, when used over and over, create the length of our work. After we have the desired work, we will learn how to bind off so we can take the stitches off the needle without them unraveling. So let's learn the different methods of casting on. Casting, there are 3 different methods, are the knitting method, the cable method, and the thumb method. The knitting method is most often taught to novice knitters because it teaches you 2 different things, how to cast on and the knit stitch. And it also creates loose stitches, which is easiest for novice knitters to knit from. So let's learn the the knitting method. So all methods will start with a slip knot placed on the left-handed needle. And then you will take the right-handed needle and you will put it under the very first part of the slip knot and behind the left-handed needle. Then you will take the yarn, wrap it counterclockwise around your needle, drop it down, and slip it. Then you will place the stitch you just created onto the left-handed needle. And you'll continue doing this until you have the correct number of stitches for your work. Next, let's move on to the cable method. The cable method is a lot like the knitting method, except for instead of only putting your needle under one side of the loop, we're going to put it under both sides. So we're going to put it under both sides of this loop. We're still putting it behind. And then we're going to wrap it counterclockwise again around, dip down, being very careful not to drop the yarn that you just knitted around, and then transfer that to the left-handed needle. And these 2, like I said before, these 2 methods are the most often taught to novice knitters, and they're taught to novice knitters because they create loose stitches. The next casting on method I'm going to teach you creates very tight stitches, but it's also an easier way to cast on, but I would not recommend it to novice knitters because again it creates tight stitches, and tight stitches are very frustrating to knit off of. So to do the thumb method, you will take the left-handed needle, transfer it to your right hand, and you'll use your left thumb instead of a needle. You will take the string, loop it around your thumb, and then you'll place the needle into the loop and slide the loop onto the needle. And you'll just continue doing this until you have the right number of stitches that you need. After we have a casted on set of stitches, we will need to know the 2 different types of stitches used to knit. So there's 2 different stitches, the knit stitch and the purl stitch. We've already learned the knit stitch and the knitting method of casting on, but we can review it. So you will need to, again, place the work in the left hand, the empty needle in your right hand. You'll put the empty needle through the first part of the closest to you of the loop. You will put it down and up, and then you'll take the string that's behind, wrap it counterclockwise around the right needle, slip it down, pull off. Now, purling is the exact opposite of that, because in knitting we have the yarn behind and we go from down to up. Purling, we have the yarn and we take it in front and we put our needle up and we go down. And then we again wrap counterclockwise, pull off. So purling, we have the yarn in front, we go up to down, wrap it counterclockwise, pull off. And we will continue doing these stitches until we have the length of work required or wanted or desired. Now, once we have the length of work that we need, we will need to bind off so we can take it off the needle and use it. Binding off, if you have been purling the whole work or you've been knitting, you continue doing the same pattern you've always done. And in this example, I'm going to use knitting. So I will knit the first 2 stitches, and then I will take the last stitch, the furthest from the tip of the needle, and I will pull it over the stitch that's closest to the tip of the needle and off the needle, being careful to keep the first stitch still on my needle. And at any point in time, I will only ever have 2 stitches on my right needle. And I will continue doing this knit pull over until I only have 1 stitch left. And when I do this, it will look like this. It will have this stitch on the needle, and I will pull this stitch loose, and I will cut the end of the string, wrap it through my loop, and pull tight. And then I will cut this string at any desired length, and then I will have my work. So I have hopefully proven to you that knitting is a very useful pastime, and it's also great to help create clothing for the less fortunate. It's a great hobby to pick up if you want to work on your hand-eye coordination. It also challenges your mind, and you can make very complex works from it, and you can also create your own clothing. Knitting is a great pastime. I mean, who doesn't want a sweater in the freezing cold winter?